We'll talk just a little bit about photo red light tickets, 21453A of the California Vehicle Code. Now, I've written my fair share. Some of the things to look out for if you are indeed not guilty, and you should only watch this if you didn't do it, you had nothing to do with violating that red light, not photo red light, just regular red light. I've been talking a lot about photo red lights. I don't think that's fair play, but again, I'm not the one that orders those cameras. If you get a photo red light ticket, they actually have a photo red light traffic coordinator, typically somebody that's dedicated to doing that job full time to talk about those tickets as they're contested. Something you might want to have them look at before I get into the other one is maybe how the technology is built, when it was calibrated last, who certified it, and all those rules in accordance with photo red light, because whatever local jurisdiction's operating it, there needs to be some kind of rules that are set forth before they're just arbitrarily going out and sticking out one of these things at an intersection near you. So a couple things to know if you're looking at just getting a regular red light ticket. Red lights are the red phase, green phase, amber phase. So you've seen these tri-light signals. Some of them have different things there. There could be U-turn arrows in different formats. There could be right turn arrows, different colors, those sorts of things, with the red one indicating you need to stop and a green one indicates you need to go. There could be a yellow phase as well, but we're just talking about your run-of-the-mill garden variety red light citation. You're coming into an intersection and you enter the intersection at some point while it's red, not stopping. So that's 21453A of the Vehicle Code here in California. And again, wrote my fair share. Some of the things to look out for is when you look at the citation or the police officers explaining it to you, try to understand what they use to establish you having ran the red light. What did they use? In other words, was it a time thing or was it a distance thing? When they first observe you, are they going to say that you were so many seconds late as you enter the intersection, or you were so many feet behind that first limit line before you enter the intersection as the light turned red, and you were somewhere in there previous to entering the intersection when the light turned red? The reason why he keeps saying when the light turned red is it's important to know several things. First off, you want to know how long that yellow phase happens to be. The amber phase, how long is it? Typically, it's somewhere between 3 or more seconds, depending on the complexity of the intersection, how much traffic and so on, how much clearance they need for other traffic. And also there's overlap sometimes where it's all red for a particular period of time to protect people from jumping the intersection, getting slammed into by somebody that actually blew the red light going another direction. So what you need to know going into court is that if the cop doesn't get there, a lot of times it's going to be dismissed. But if the cop does show up, a lot of times when they testify, they're going to put you at a particular distance behind the intersection when the light turned red. What does it mean? Where does the intersection start? All right. So if you have a typical intersection, we'll just take streets that cross at 90-degree angles, just a nice cross type street. If you have that, usually the first crosswalk line, if there is a crosswalk line, as you're entering the intersection, going towards the center, the first one is the beginning of that intersection. That's typical. Now, if there's another hash line on the ground, that could also be the beginning of the intersection. If there is no crosswalk and there's an unmarked crosswalk, then you're going to have to look at the vehicle code to see what establishes the distance of an unmarked crosswalk. But let's just go garden variety here. Let's say there's a crosswalk. Let's say it's 15 feet wide, which is not uncommon. And let's say it proceeds from 15 feet before the prolongation of the first curb line as you enter the intersection back 15 feet. So that's where the violation would begin in the scenario I'm talking about when it comes to getting a red light ticket. The officer then is going to need to testify how far behind the beginning of that line, that first entry line into the crosswalk, how far back you were when the light turned red. And in some cases, you might have been 15 feet, 20 feet, 30 feet, 40 feet, whatever it is. But the further you were back when the light turned red, behind that first limit line, or what they consider the beginning of the intersection, more dangerous. And the reason why they determine that is the beginning of the intersection is because people are in the crosswalk. That's what a crosswalk's for, pedestrian traffic. So it wouldn't be after, as you get to the prolongation of the first curb line. It's actually going to be set back where people can legally cross back and forth across the street. That's why they're determining that's the beginning of that particular intersection. So as somebody is driving towards it, the police officer should have a good view of where that red phase is. But if it's a complicated intersection where you have right turn arrows and U-turn arrows and these sorts of things, two-way, three-way left turn lanes, all this, the officer is going to have a more difficult time, especially when you go to court, talking about exactly their positioning and where they were. Now, if they're right behind you as you're going through it and they activate their lights and come after you into the intersection, you know, that's not too difficult because they had a nice direct view of that light turning red. They saw your vehicle, and then they were positioned in a particular position. They could activate their emergency equipment, follow you through, write you the ticket. If they were somewhere else, and I would want to know where they were on the citation, there should be a little diagram. It should show you in an arrow, and it should show where the cop was on the citation. If not, that's something you want to ask in court. Where were you, officer? What were you sitting? And then instead of asking them that question of, did you have a clear and unobstructed view of me, which most of the time they're probably going to say yes, unless you can totally disprove it because of what you've seen on the citation. That's a whole nother story, and good for you. But if you ask them the question, most times they're going to say yes, and then you're kind of stuck if you don't have anywhere else to go. The rule in court, and I'm not an attorney, none of this is meant to be legal advice, just a motor cop that wrote over 60,000 tickets over a period of 15 years. Sorry, that was the job. But, you know, for yourselves, and don't ask that question that you don't know the answer to. And if you do know the answer and you believe that it's going to equate to somebody lying in court, fantastic, because that's going to be enough for beyond a reasonable doubt. And if proven on a lie, sometimes there's an issue for the police officer above and beyond the particular traffic citation that he's testifying on, or she. So let's talk about the distance. If they're behind you or they're somewhere in the intersection and you enter the intersection when the light is red, then you're in violation. If you enter that intersection when the light is yellow, you're not in violation. So that's the point. So it could be a perception thing. They could be looking at a different signal. They could be sitting on another side of the intersection as you're coming through. They could be sitting over here, and there could be an overlap. So them thinking you ran the red light because you didn't, because there was more amber overlap maybe for your direction, then they would be in error, if you see my point. So there's ways by where they're located, by how that signal phasing at that particular intersection works. These are different ways for you to be able to fight and become victorious, because all you need in court is the officer needs to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. All you need to do is create the reasonable doubt. You don't do it by getting upset, yelling and screaming. You do it by presenting the facts, and court is the way it always has been. Whenever somebody goes in, they're prepared, they're not arrogant, which a lot of cops are arrogant, so the judges don't like that. But when a regular person goes in and tries to prove their case, takes the time, done some studying, watched some videos like this, and has had some consultation maybe by somebody that's done this before, knows how to ask the right questions, oh my gosh, the judges are kind of set back and happy, and they usually find people not guilty in a lot of cases. So we're talking about time. What the officer is going to do, let's say you were 30 feet late. Let's say he says you were 30 feet prior to the beginning of the intersection when the signal turned red. Then more than likely they're going to ask how fast you were going. Let's say you say 30 miles an hour. He's going to do a quick computation, whether with a calculator in his brain, half of 30 is 15. Add those two numbers together, you were traveling approximately 45 feet per second. You were actually going a little bit less than that, more than that, but he's going to go ahead and equate that, and it's going to be in your favor. So after they do the computation, he's going to say, okay, were you when the light turned red? A lot of people reflect back and they think that maybe they were somewhere in the middle of the intersection, maybe under the red light itself when it turned red, and in essence, they should have been way past that point because of how fast they were traveling through the intersection and the width of the intersection, the width of the crosswalk, all of these other factors. So people are sometimes under the misconception that they really didn't travel as far as they should have, or they actually did, because of course getting pulled over, it's just not a simple thing. It doesn't happen as often as would be required to make it very, relaxed moment and kind of walk in the park. It's stressful. So a lot of people have that kind of temporary amnesia that pops in every once in a while because they're completely stressed out. I mean, to get stopped by a cop, not even me. I don't like it. It's not fun. And, when they stop you, they always start with that stupid saying or that stupid phrase, do you know why I stopped you? Really? No, because I didn't do anything wrong. That should be the answer to that. All right. So as far as time distance goes, they're going to kind of that to be your demise. So what you want to do is, if you did enter the intersection legally, you're going to want to state that, and then you're going to want to determine how all of this happened. And if in fact you can reverse it on the officer, maybe he doesn't know that little time distance equation trick, and basically just look up on Google how to convert miles per hour to feet per second. I'm multiplying it by 1.5. The equation's actually a little bit different, but when I do it that way, it's always in the violator's favor. It's the same thing with radar and laser. If a cop could be positioned directly in front of a violator with that laser device or radar device, that would equate to that device rendering the most accurate speed that the violator was traveling. Most police officers, though, are off on some side road behind a bush, hiding behind a tree, and they're shooting radar and laser in that regard. So usually as they come, well, all the time, as they get more at an angle, it actually equates to the violator's favor, showing you actually going less than what you truly were. Same thing with the time distance calculation as far as the miles per hour conversion to feet per second. So once you get that and you understand that, then it's going to help your ability when you get into court and the officer starts to discuss where you were positioned when the light turned yellow, how long that yellow phase happens to be, and where you were when the light turned red. A lot of times they will ask you, were you when the light turned yellow? And a lot of people say, well, I was just entering the intersection. Then they say, how fast were you going? They say, well, about 30 miles an hour. So in his brain, he's thinking, okay, feet, the intersection, I measured it's 60 feet wide. We have 15 feet for this crosswalk. So we're at, what was that, 60 plus 30, so 90. So now we're 90 feet all the way across from beginning of intersection on this side to the end of the intersection on this side. So that's 90 feet. And you enter the intersection on an amber phase. So you hit here in yellow, and you said that you were traveling 30 miles an hour, 45 feet per second. Where were you when the light turned red? Oh, I was in the intersection. Oh, okay. You're in the intersection, and that's it. So then he goes back, well, Your Honor, the intersection itself is 90 feet wide. If he's traveling 45 feet per second, it would have taken him 2 seconds to get through the intersection. He would have been way past the intersection, at least another 30 feet when that light turned red. He wouldn't have been, and then guilty. So you have to know going in, first off, is the police officer using time, or is the police officer using a distance equation when they determine that you failed to stop for the red phase of the tri-light signal? Now, if they're using time, all that means is they now have to involve another calculation, and in some cases it's more difficult. At least I think it's better to use the distance element. Now, one of the other things you might want to think about, how good is the police officer at determining distance? Now, in the police academy and throughout our careers, usually we have a lot of firearms training. At least LAPD did. I don't know if other agencies fulfill that obligation as often, but at least, a month, twice a month, we were on some kind of range that had distances that you could see marked on the range. Also, growing up, playing football or soccer or baseball, you kind of get an idea for distance. If an officer is able to back up with their training experience and life experience that they're able to calculate distances, then usually that's not going to be a problem. But that might not be a bad thing, a bad road for you to go down as a person that's trying to fight a 21453A citation or that red light citation, if the officer has a particular training or experience in the distance estimations. And try not to be too sarcastic. You don't want to throw out, well, how far is it to the back door of the court? Maybe you already paced it off or measured it. You have to be wary on those things because he might just get it right, or maybe he is some kind of an expert at distance measurements. Now, I will tell you the attitude thing. Some cops have really big ego-driven attitudes. Maybe you've seen this. And some violators, people we write tickets to, same egos. You got them in all shapes and sizes. It really doesn't matter whether they're wearing the badge or the uniform, or they're just, Joe shit from the street. Doesn't really matter. Just a regular person, human being, or somebody that's, protected to serve. I will tell you, though, that judges don't like arrogance. And if you go into court, you definitely want to be absolutely, unbelievably respectful to the judge or the pro tem that's sitting on the stand. If it happens to be a pro tem, which is like an attorney wanting to be a judge or just playing judge for the day, with all the powers and everything that goes with being a judge, at least for the time they're serving on the stand, you also want to respect them. Some of the biggest mistakes I see is attorneys going in there wanting to move the case in front of a regular judge. A lot of times that's a losing battle, because those regular judges, that's why they got the pro tem there, so the regular judge doesn't have to watch or deal with these traffic cases. Be careful of assuming that they're going to be on your side. Be careful assuming that the police officer is going to make a mistake. As you're going through your testimony, be gentle, be explanative, be patient, and listen and maybe take notes with what the officer's telling you. It's okay. If you're defending yourself, acting like your own attorney on an infraction, it's okay to take notes. It's okay to ask for clarification. A lot of people get nervous. It's that whole public speaking thing, right? People would rather kill themselves than be a public speaker or appear and speak in front of other people, because it's completely embarrassing. Here you go into court, you got a jury box full of cops, if that's the way they still do it, and you got another room full of your audience, and you're going to be up there standing in front of a judge. You got the bailiff over here, got the cop over here on your right or left, depending on how the court's configured, and there you are. You're going to be testifying, trying to get out of a traffic citation. Suck it up, buttercup, work on it, practice it, do it in the mirror. This is a big deal, and you should make the best moves possible. Having said that, there's a lot more to unpack with red light citations, where he drew himself in the intersection on the citation, if they did, if there's any holes in the citation, what his description was, what kind of traffic there was. A lot of different factors to also look at on the individual citation. If any of you watching this get a citation and you want to email it to me, you'll be able to do that. Just hit me up here on YouTube or on Ticket Whisper, any one of my many locations, Instagram, Facebook groups, of course, Facebook page, and also on YouTube here. Ticket Whisper. Be happy to take a look at it, and then we can talk about maybe the best approaches with any kind of errors on the citation. Now, let me close with this. We had a cop, and that guy that would write anybody and their mother a ticket, he just wrote everybody. And I remember a couple weeks before the incident I'm going to tell you about, he wrote one of the captain's secretaries a ticket. Our captain's secretary. So it's not like some obscure captain's secretary, but one that he saw all the time, because that was also his captain's secretary. So this cat would write anybody a ticket. And it didn't matter to him. He wrote records clerks. Not that any of these people should be exempt. He wrote cops, wives, cops' kids. He wrote a captain. He shouldn't care. Wrote everybody. So one day we're in court, and he never lost a ticket. And he could tell the judge that was part of his introduction to who he was. I'm so-and-so with LAPD Valley Traffic Division. I've written to date 20,242 citations. Of those citations, I've had 1,963 contested, and I haven't lost a case. Everybody's been found guilty. I have this kind of training, this kind of expertise. Jesus Christ, just without the robe. And he goes through the whole thing, and it was just amazing to watch. This guy was he was a robot. Oh, and he even printed like he was a typewriter. His tickets were perfect. There was no errors, just like he was typing. The most miraculous thing. Anyway, so we get into court, and he's coming up on a speeding ticket. Everything's perfect. We're all sitting in the jury box, Oh, there he goes. He's going to go do his thing. And, this guy, watch him talk, listen to that whole thing he has memorized. Oh, my God. It was kind of neat. So we sit there and watch. And his last name started with the same letter as mine, so we were in court at the same time. And that's what they do, too. If a cop works traffic, they usually try to put all the tickets on a particular day at a particular court, so they're all in there one right after another, and you basically just knock them out if the people want to fight the tickets, one right after another. So he goes up. This is the first one of the day, and the last one. You'll see why. So he gets up there, and there's this cat, Mexican kid, nice kid, comes up, hard worker. He's wearing an oil-stained shirt from, looks like some kind of automotive repair place. Gets up there, broken English. The officer goes up, gives his whole spiel, right? And then now it's this guy's turn. So he comes up and he talks about how he doesn't have a car. That day he was running late for work because his mom was sick. So he had to borrow his sister's car because usually he walked to work. And as he's driving down the street, he noticed a car just like hers, and he kind of mental note, he said, kind of passed him, cut him off and turned down a side street. Anyway, and he was continuing on. He's thinking, actually said in court, he thought to himself, I wonder where the cops are. You know, like me always gets stopped, nobody else gets stopped. Sure enough, he gets pulled over. So he never had the tape played because the cop also had all of his tapes, micro cassettes. He recorded every traffic stop, even before people were legitimately recording traffic stops. He just did it way back in the day. So this cat gets up there and he did his testimony. And, you know, officer's looking really confident. And this kid's not, you know, looks like he's thinking he just did a crappy job. I was thinking, oh, that's pretty good. And then the judge says, I'm going to find you not guilty. And you could have heard a pin drop. Never has he had any ticket found not guilty. They were all guilty. That was his testimony. Now he's going to have to change it. But he melted down. He said, excuse me? And the judge pulled back and said, not guilty on what grounds? Oh, it just went downhill from there. So more words were exchanged, more under-breath utterances with foul words were used. And then next thing you know, disarmed by the bailiff. They get more sheriffs there. He's disarmed. He has all of his knives and stuff taken. He's placed into custody for contempt, and he's locked up in the back. So that's where that ended. Then later I find out that, remember a couple weeks before he wrote the captain's secretary? Well, who do you think gets the phone call that your officer's been arrested and for contempt of court and put into the stockade there, the jail? Well, of course, the captain. Do you really think the captain really wanted to do anything but just let him sit for contempt? Maybe get him driven down to the glass house and booked in? Well, anyway, I'm not sure how it worked out after that, but it just goes to show you that not everybody is exempt from this ego thing. And if you're going to go testify in court because you didn't do something that you're being accused of, you want to go in prepared and calm and make sure you have all of the evidence you possibly can. It is your right. I'm Connor. We will see you in the next one.